The Hustleshare podcast is sponsored by One CFO, the Philippines' leading fractional CFO services provider for startups, scale-ups, and SMEs. Experience the power of tech-enabled, efficient, affordable, and expert-led fractional CFO services. Let One CFO handle your finances so you can focus on growing your business. Book your free CFO consultation today.
In the Philippines, unfortunately, there's very few opportunities for that confluence because the quantums we're talking about are vastly different, right? In terms of the amount of capital we're talking about.
Welcome to Hustleshare, the podcast that features the daily grinds of unique hustlers around the world to show not our differences, but that our hustles are very much alike. Now here's your host, Ronster Betyong.
Welcome to this episode of the Share Podcast. It's finally here. I'm super happy that we are finally getting this guy. Majority of the time, he is not available. And when I'm available, or when he's available, I'm the one who's not available. But finally, stars align. And we are able to put him on the show because he's one of the most vital parts of the startup ecosystem. Not just in mentoring startups, but actually giving them funding. And I'm one of the lucky guys that was able to get this. When was this? When did you guys fund us? 2021? 2020? 4 or 5 years ago. And without them, we would have died a long time ago because we were funded by amazing angels. Without further ado, let's welcome to the show the founding member and the head of screening of Manila Angel Investors Network, Mr. Joseph De Leon. Whoop, whoop. Welcome to the show, JDL.
So great to be here, Ron, after so many years. Thanks for having me, and good morning to all your hustlers.
There you go. Again, super happy to see you. The last time I saw you, literally, I remember this vividly. I don't remember where I went, but it's in Mactan. And I went back to see you and a bunch of guys in J Park Hotel's lobby having some drinks. I was like, man, I'm thirsty. I'm going to get a drink too.
We were having a meeting, Ron. That was a meeting.
Sorry. Meeting pala. Meeting. Okay. Okay, meeting. Which I went on to get a shake. Because it was hot and humid and I needed a drink. There you go. Again, dude, been a big fan of yours. You don't know how many people look up to you. You don't know how many people you've helped. But I need to ask you this, which is the $1 million question. JDL, what's your hustle?
Well, Ron, I wear a lot of hats, right? But they actually all point in the same direction. My mission is to really help founders and businesses become as valuable as possible without compromising their values. So I do that at different levels. In my day job, I'm a partner in an M&A advisory that you've probably never heard of called Gravitas Prime, but you might have heard of some of the deals that we help put together. So we're the group that helps sell Yellow Cab, Red Ribbon, Goldilocks. We help Japan's largest food group find their Philippine partner after they looked for 1 year. We found them a partner in 3. We're currently also the buy-side advisor for a Japanese PE fund. So if you have a business that has $3 million in EBITDA and wants $5 to $30 million to scale and grow, they can provide that. And then you can all exit together. And then recently, we're very glad to say that we've also been selected to be the collaboration partner for Anderson Tax Global for their Philippine practice in valuation and M&A.
Wow. I did not know that.
That's why we're talking, Ron.
Nice.
But my background is actually not so much in numbers. I did do a Master's of Finance in UP years ago after my first gig in San Miguel. About halfway through, I was class president. I was number 1 in strategy for financial institutions, number 1 in marketing for financial institutions. But in all the finance stuff, I was dead in the middle.
Okay.
So I decided to proceed with my MBA instead in the States. So I ended up moving to Malaysia to become the head of strategy for FCB, which is a global ad agency. For your listeners in Malaysia, I did the research. I was part of the team that did the research to launch CIMB's Octo campaign.
No way.
So all the cute red octopus
Yep.
in Malaysia, my team helped build that. I was traveling all over the country to help introduce that. Then my swan song in that space was I helped launch Oreos um, for the
Oreo
single
cookie?
women Oreos thins for the single women's market
Wow.
in China and the world because we did research that basically determined that Chinese moms from Shanghai to Singapore didn't like Oreo cookies for their kids because it made their kids' teeth black and was messy and as the Chinese
Oh.
say was makan. So we
Okay.
basically told Oreos, guys, if you want to introduce and get Oreos to be a brand that moms in China love, you have to catch them when they're still single. And after my
Oh.
regional assignment, I got a call at 6 a.m. from the chief strategy officer from New York.
Okay.
And I was like, "Good morning, Vito. Why are you calling me?" And then she said, "Joseph, I know that you've retired, but can
Uh-huh.
I borrow you for 2 weeks and send you to China?" I'm like, "Why?" Because remember when we told Oreos to go make a new cookie for the single women of China?
Uh-huh.
Well, hold your milk. They actually did it, and they're going to
What?
launch a global product called Oreo Thins. And since it's kind of your fault, why don't you go to China and help them sort it out? So I lived in Shanghai for 6 months out of a suitcase.
Man. Oh my
Um,
God.
and basically, what happened was after I did that, I decided I wanted to be a strategy marketing guy for Southeast Asia. And then I told my dad, and then my dad, whipped out the biggest English that he's ever used on me, and he said, "Son, I'm glad you're done gallivanting.
Oh God.
Um, it's time for you to join the firm." So I got into M&A the traditional way through nepotism. And so
Uh,
after a year on the job, I realized that I got most of it, but I really didn't have a vibe for what it's like to be one of my clients who goes out and buys an entire company, right? Because
wow.
I'm a little crazier than I'm richer Asian, so I couldn't afford to do that. But I could afford to lose a little money and gamble a little on investing in a part of a startup and see where that
Mm.
goes. And so I found a group of other individuals who'd already started Manila Angel Investors Network. So, but they're kind enough to count me as one of the founding members because I was member number 6.
Mhm.
And then in the first deal that I syndicated, fortunately, I was able to inspire some of my other friends to risk some of their capital as well. And so we tripled the membership in that first deal. And now we're
Wow.
large and active angel investor
Uh,
network in the Philippines.
it's the
Um,
real deal. If you want the
yeah,
real angels, this is heaven. All of them are here. There you go.
well, it's
Floating.
remember,
There you
remember,
go.
Lucifer's an angel too. So
Yeah,
it's
we
not
don't they kicked
it's
them out.
not about some and that.
These are
So
the legit
you know,
angels flying in heaven. Oh, yeah, there you go.
so so we do what we can. So over the last decade, we've deployed a few $1 million in capital and helped over 2 dozen startups,
Mhm.
both based in the Philippines and abroad, but always with the Philippine nexus. And because I'm doing work on the PE side and M&A side and have access to people that have large amounts of capital. And on the other side, I'm helping startups from all over the world try to get there. I decided to open up my own practice last year called Bullet Day because I was
Ooh.
having a Zoom with my brother and I said, Balang araw, I'm going to start my own consulting firm. So I started Bullet Day. And
So that's
the
why
essence of,
balang araw. Wow.
yeah.
Okay. What an
And
English translation. Okay.
and the rationale and to deliver some real value I connected with a global group called
Okay.
Value Builders.
Okay.
And that's a group that's started by John Warlow, the author of a really wonderful book on M&A called Built to Sell, where really a lot of people start their business out of passion and they think they'll do it forever, but that's not really the case most of the time.
Nope.
And most exits really aren't fancy IPOs.
Nope.
Most of them are actually mergers and acquisitions. So with the
Yes.
Value Builder Advisors, the structure, we help you design your business so that you will exit for the most value possible. Because even at the same revenue or profit levels, if you don't have the right drivers in place, right, you could be underpriced. So by changing the way you do business, the way you structure your business, you can get a genuine premium for what you offer, and that's part of what it's all about, right? Um, and then apparently, because I'm a sucker for punishment. This year, I was asked and invited by George Escaler, the leader of Founder Institute Manila, Founder Institute Philippines, if I would be willing to take on the role of becoming one of the new directors,
Wow.
because he has to step down and take care of business, right?
Yep.
And because I have been a mentor for Founder Institute for a long, long time,
Yep.
I'm also the first Filipino to complete what is Founder Institute's venture capital lab, which was basically a program designed to help create VC funds. I've been able to see firsthand the quality of curriculum and the quality of network and the structure that they have. And I thought that it would be a horrible shame if we lost access to that in the Philippines, because I think
Absolutely.
it's something very vital for us to leapfrog where we are right now. So
Totally.
a lot of crazy things, but they actually all are a pipeline. I'm not a short term greedy person. I'm a long term greedy
Long
person, as I
game.
tell people. Right, I'm always trying to play the long game, so I'm helping to build the pipeline every step of the way. And again, I apologize for those who don't know, Founder Institute is the world's largest pre-seed accelerator.
Yep.
With over 200 chapters worldwide, with they've raised over 1.8 billion dollars in funds. They're the guys that helped launch some great brands like Udemy, right? And so they have a wonderful pipeline and a wonderful network of mentors, not just here in the Philippines, but all over the world. And so we've been able to help startups all over the world really scale and become world class.
That is amazing. Now, again, I love how you detailed every single hustle that you did and all that, and you kind of provided the outline of that whole episode already. But before we even do that, this is also a long gameplay. We don't just brush through, because we also need to understand each lesson along the way. So I need you to buckle up, GDL, real quick, because we're gonna go through
Okay.
that outline that you did and dissect it one by one, because we're gonna have to ride the Hustleshare time machine. All right. Now again, super duper love that you outlined the whole episode. You made my job
Beso
easier.
namin, nasa sound effects lang.
No, that's what it is. There's so many founders and amazing people in the ecosystem that have been through that. Some cause some become nauseous. I'm glad you didn't. Okay. Okay. So I want to understand. You mentioned the amazing career that you've done, but I want to go all the way back first. Before school, before anything else, because you said your dad said you were gallivanting for a while. But what was it like growing up, and what was the first exposure to hustling that you remember?
Okay. Oh gosh, this is super way back. So my first sense of what hustling meant is probably something I got from my parents. So my father, he's a well-respected man in the industry. His name is Gus De Leon. He went from the mailroom to the boardroom of
Ooh.
RFM. So
Oh.
he joined after graduating from UP, and joined the HR team of RFM Corporation under
Nara selecta
Joe
growing up,
Con.
no?
No, this was before Selecta, right? So we
Before
had
pa.
we
Wow.
had Swift. So at the
Swift hot
time, my
dog. Mm.
Swift hot dogs, and my father helped win the McDonald's account. So my
Oh.
memory of childhood, the thing that made me very popular at Xavier was because we were able to buy McChicken patties. So we
Oh
would actually have
man.
McChicken in the house
I love it.
every few Sundays, right? So that's my dad. My dad hustled. He raised 10 kids, all quite successful. I'm actually the loser in the group compared to how wonderful and brilliant my
No
siblings are.
way. Are you kidding me?
Um, and uh, and so he was a hardworking man, but he made it a point to try and get home at 6, be with us. Um, and so he was a true point of inspiration. Then also my mother, who was a professor at the University of the Philippines, she's one of the
Wow.
first female food technologists. And
Mhm.
one of the key lessons I learned from her was that she not only taught the class, she wrote the book. So I think that's one of the most powerful tools
Galing.
that you can do. Write the book of the game you're playing.
Wow.
And I remember I was introduced to a food tech startup pre-pandemic, and I told them, "Oh, I love food tech because my mother is a professor. My mother is a professor of food technology." And they asked, "Oh, who's your mother?" And I said, "Oh, my mom is Toti De Leon." And then one of the proudest moments of my life, they said, "You know what, sir? Your mom is not just your mom. She's the mom of food technology in the Philippines." So I
Amazing.
think that's one of the most wonderful things anyone's ever said. So happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Yes, and we're recording this on a Mother's Day. So there you go. What an ode to that. Okay. And
Yeah.
again, now I understand because I'm looking at your LinkedIn. While you were in Xavier, you were editor in chief, so you knew
Oh
how to
yeah.
write, and you were also the president of the debate club. Okay, so I've had a few debaters here, namely Mr. RJ Ledesma when they were young, and also Mr. Ibra Bernardo, who were former debaters. And man, what I want to understand when we go dissect these things, I want to understand the early skill stacks that you develop because there are skills that we develop when we're young that really transcend the test of time, right? Like
Sure.
that same thing that you develop early on, you still use that skill today. What were those early skills that you remember doing in say in Xavier and Ateneo when you were growing up?
Okay. So I think one of my favorite books when I was in high school is a book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by Dr. Betty Edwards. So it's not in my LinkedIn, but I was also president of the Chinese Painting Club and vice president of the art club. When I was going to graduate
Wow.
high school, I'd done photography at Mole Fund, and I thought, I'd become either
Arab Small
a
Fund
yeah, they
there
had a
in
great
New Manila.
in New Manila, right?
Yes.
And so I took up photography because my sister was in it, and then I stepped in the dark room, and then I saw that um the teacher had like these pictures of all these pretty girls. And I was
Ooh.
like, oh, I want to do this. And so I took up photography, and then at the time I was gonna go into college, I was thinking I want to be a fine artist, a businessman, or a lawyer. And then
Okay.
I visited the UP College of Fine Arts, and then I saw all these brilliant, brilliant artists.
Okay.
And then I realized I am skilled, they are talented, so that I would never be in the top 20% of this segment.
Right,
And
right.
I figured, Zabel Dayal is a wonderful photographer and everyone loves him. Maybe
Yep.
my route to art is to become a billionaire first, and then people will like my art no matter what,
And
right?
put it on Green Belt's wall, technically,
Yeah.
whatever that is.
So, so I think to answer your question, one of the early stacks that I developed
Okay.
is creativity in a structured way. So if you
Love
read
it.
that book, it actually articulates a theory of creativity, right? About how you actually have to go through a process of gathering information and getting all these points of inspiration and then trusting your subconscious to put stuff together, right? Until you arrive at what the Germans call a Gestalt moment, right? Where everything comes
Ooh.
together. And if you're a hustler and if you're a founder, I'm sure you've experienced this, right? And then
Mhm.
that's the sort of thing that leads to the more common practices of flow, etc. But for me, the seminal piece
Okay.
was that creativity framework of how great ideas actually happen. How do you get an insight,
Mhm.
right? That it's actually work. It's actually work to get creative, right? So that's the initial tech stack. Then the next hack stack that I
Uh-huh.
developed was I became very interested in debate because I thought I'd be a lawyer.
Mhm.
And so I went into that wholeheartedly and I became the head of the debate team in Savior. And, thanks to the great people on the team,
Yep.
we basically won every single debate championship
Wow.
um, against all the other schools that year. So I remember sitting in my bed and I had like, no joke, I had like a trophy. I wasn't very tall. So when I was sitting down on my bed, the trophy, the top of the trophy from the floor was
Right.
looking right at me. And I was like, wow, I helped do this because I wasn't actually on the teams that did these debates, except for one division where I said, okay, I have to go practice what I preach and actually debate myself. And then we won that championship.
Okay.
But my teams actually beat RJ once in a
Oh.
while. And, we're all good friends now, but
But
it's a
bitter
friendly
rivals before.
friendly rivalry,
Uh-huh.
even then. And so what that taught me was really to quite a few things actually. So one of them was in terms of being able to truly articulate an argument and build a
Yes.
case quickly.
Mhm.
And then more importantly, being able to switch sides, right? Because you'd have to debate both sides of an argument. So you have to be objective. You have to be passionate on the one side, but
Mhm.
also objective and be able to um, hold, hold these ideas rightly, but
Yep.
don't hold to them fast, right? You have to be able to let them go if they don't work, right? And to see all sides of the argument.
Yep.
And then the other thing that I developed was, I guess, the understanding of logical fallacies and how to actually interrogate people, which I think
Mm.
some of you have had a wonderful experience of, to
Yep.
really get to the facts and to really at the same time build a case for your side, right?
Love it.
Because that's what you have to do in the real world. You really have to get people to come on board and agree that this is something that makes sense for everybody, right? And that's been a skill that's been helpful for me throughout my career.
No, for sure. Because if you can already, what a skill stack. Because I've never seen this before. Literally, you're dissecting creativity and putting structure, and now you have debate, and you're trying to articulate and literally see the fallacies over how people are technically articulating. Oh shoot, this guys are trying to do a sweeping generalization, blah blah blah, and then you look at it in multiple lenses. Wow, that any I can just imagine at any room that automatically kicks in because you've done it for so long and you were doing it since you were young.
Yeah. And then the last part is, I mean, we won all these trophies and all these
Yeah.
awards, right? But I wasn't the star, right? I was very happy being in the background,
Mm.
and getting people to bring out their best thinking. And I was so inspired by how much smarter my friends were compared to me. And it was a dynamic learning experience. So I do want to give credit to one of my most important teachers, Miss Delia Calivel from Xavier.
Shout out.
You changed my life, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Because she really made it fun for us to actually stay up late, most weeks of the night and just like argue in a fun way and play out strategies, right? Really think through strategies. Okay, if this person argues this, then what's the counter argument for that? And just run it through. And the whole idea of, can I swear on this show?
Yeah,
Um,
I do it all
yeah.
the time.
So basically, the thinking that was ingrained in me early was, it's better to fuck up in the room,
Yep.
right? So that you can win outside.
Mm.
So don't be embarrassed about screwing up in front of me,
Yep.
because that's the game. That's how you win the game,
Yep.
right? Fail fast, learn even faster, right? If you're not learning, then that's your
Patay.
fault, right? But the whole point, okay, let's go through the mistakes now where it's cheap,
Yeah.
right? It only costs us pizza, and at the time we couldn't do coffee, but we were just like,
Yep.
it's just pizza and cokes, and then after that, when the day comes, as long as you're not distracted by the pretty girls, you can win, right? So
What if they're all
uh,
bombshells on the other side, though? Then there goes your strategy. Wala na.
yeah,
There you go.
that's okay. We had gay people on our team as a backup, so
Okay.
we were able to counter effectively, right? So we
Okay.
matched the players to the game, so that worked out all right.
That's amazing. Now, all right.
Um,
Before we take our last break, before we take our first, not last break, first break. So amazing stack. What else did you build on top of this? Because I feel like there's a lot of great foundations you've built early on at the start. So aside from debate, yeah, the creative, structured thinking that you were talking about. What else?
so this is not something that I picked up. So this is something I picked up early,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't learn about it in a more structured way until much later, right? Because again, I'm the ninth of 10 kids, right? So human dynamics
Wow.
is something that I really had to understand as a kid,
Yeah.
because you know I'm with other cute smart kids, right? And I wanted that extra piece of chicken, right? So I had to be charming as hell,
from RFM. Oh, huh? There
right?
you
So
go.
I had to make my mom and dad smile so that they'd let me have the last piece of chicken and make my sisters not feel bad and like make them happy to give me that extra piece of drumstick, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, and so I learned that I had to, that you have to do it in an entertaining way as well, and that really became part of my skill set. So it's
Mm.
so when I do the personality tests, right?
Mm.
I'm actually a introvert, but I
What?
fake it. Yep. And so later on, when I finished my midlife crisis after my China stint,
Uh,
I went, I did the cliche stuff, sort of buying a expensive car. Um,
okay.
I, I, I spent some time on a beach in Sihanoukville in Cambodia.
Okay.
I went and I visited my old haunts. I was in Atlanta, Georgia, where I did my MBA. And
Okay.
at the time, I was
There's a lot
having a
of great
cigarette.
facilities in Atlanta. Huh?
Yep. So I was
Magic
having a
City. There
cigarette.
you go. And
Yep. Part of why I love that town, right? So I was there.
and chicken wings too.
Popeyes was good.
Yeah.
And Krispy Kreme. I
There
remember
you go.
when I had my first Krispy Kreme donut,
Oh
and I
man.
thought, oh my God, every other donut I've had prior to this was a goddamn lie. So God bless Krispy Kreme and God bless Atlanta, right? So when I was there, I was having my midlife crisis properly.
Mhm.
And I was thinking it'd be great if I bumped into my old friend who was with me we were in a cult called Landmark Education together. It's not so bad. There's a couple of good things about it, but it gets a little
Okay.
sketchy in the end. But I did learn a lot from that, right? And as I was there, um, in that Panera Bread, thinking, it'd be great if I bumped into my old friend Leslie Williams
Okay.
because she was someone who really knew how to let me know that I screwed up
Okay.
without making me feel like a screw up. So it's very important that you're able to accept that you failed at
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
and understand what you failed at,
Yeah.
right? Without feeling like a failure, right?
Mm.
Because there's a distinction, right? And one thing leads to success and one leads to depression and anxiety
Right.
and other horrible outcomes, right? And I was just about ready to go enjoy the rest of my day.
Okay.
I may or may not have been planning to go to some of those fun facilities you mentioned. But I walked into the Panera Bread and then standing in line to get a cookie was my good friend Leslie Williams. So I
No
held her arm
way.
and I said, Leslie, I was manifesting you. Let's go outside and talk. Because I have to go to the
Wow.
bathroom,
Did
but we'll
he
go
at
talk
least get to
outside.
order?
So she did get to order and we
Okay.
did get to talk. And so this is the last stack. Well, not the last stack, but this is an
Okay.
important stack that I picked up from her, right?
Okay.
So we were talking about my situation
Mhm.
and what I was planning to. At the time, I was planning to migrate to Canada
Wow.
because I thought I liked cold weather and I thought that, I like,
Man, you've
uh,
been all over the place.
I also
China,
moved.
Cambodia,
Uh,
Atlanta, and then you wanted to go north.
and I'd literally just gotten back from Manhattan where I'd
Wow.
visited my good friend, the chief strategy officer, and I said, my plan is to go to Canada. And she was very gracious and said, Joseph, go to Toronto or Montreal because there are FCB offices there. And if there's no strategy opening, I will create one for you.
Wow.
So I actually had the opportunity to, migrate to Canada without a job because I knew with confidence that if I walked into an FCB office,
Yep.
I would have a job. I don't know what it would be. I might be getting coffee. I don't know, but it would have been employment, right? But at that point in time, in that conversation with Leslie, she really got me thinking because what she introduced to me was a framework called transactional philosophy, right? So this is developed by a group of former landmark founders, and they they took their learning and they reprocessed it for themselves, and they took what was great about what they've experienced and added their own new stuff.
Yep.
And they started this great group called Influence Ecology, and now it's called Influential You.
Mm.
And they gave a framework on transactional philosophy where the thinking is this, right? Everything is a transaction. It gets a bad rap now
Yep.
because of the way it's used, but another way to really think about transactions is it actually an engagement relationship, right? And so that everything you do is a transaction.
Yep.
Every time you say something like, pass the salt, will you go on a date with me? Will you marry me? Do you want to buy this business? Right? Do you want me to go on this podcast? Do you want me to make this investment? It's all a transaction, right? And it's a cycle. There's actually a structure to a transaction, right? And that at every stage of the game, there are individuals who are better suited for different parts of the transaction, right? So I'm going to steal from Simon Sinek and use Apple as a framework because, everybody knows who they are. So it'll make it a lot simpler. So at the top of that cycle, right, you have to come up with all the possibilities, right? Figure out what are all the possibilities to solve this problem that I have.
Yep.
Right. And so you have to invent all these possibilities. So a great example for that is think of Steve Jobs, right? Full of brilliant, crazy ideas, right? And in the startup game, these are the people we tend to admire because they're powerful visionaries.
Right.
Right. And that's fantastic. Now, the thing is, that's all wonderful and everything, but I'm sure many in your audience, myself included, have had great bosses or ungreat bosses who always have a new idea, and then you never get anything done because they keep coming up with new ideas and you never get to follow through on everything because they're always chasing the idea of the week or the latest
flavor of the month, whatever that is. Right?
And so what has to happen is from all those possibilities, you actually have to zero in on one possibility, right? And make a commitment. This is what we're going to do, right? And you have to start inviting people and inspiring people to commit, right? And so you have to see in advance what's going to happen, right? And so think about John Ives, right? The visual spiritual successor to Steve Jobs, and how he was really able to sell the idea of what they were up to, right? So these are your friends who are wonderful people. You love them to bits. They're the ones that are always late because, I met somebody and we were talking and I really wanted to help them out. So these are great people. They connect with all the important pieces and make things happen in that way. Now, the challenge that you have with these people is, they are horrible at writing contracts because if you ask them to get a contract through the line, they will end up agreeing to everything because they don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
People pleasers.
People pleasers, right? And they always find the sympathetic side to everything. And so you end up with a contract that doesn't make sense because it becomes unfeasible. Right? So with the inventors, the challenge they have is, besides that they're talking about the future all the time, is that when people talk to them, they tend to say yes. But when they say yes, they don't actually mean yes in the sense of, yes, I will do it. They say yes in the sense that, yes, I believe this is possible, right? And so I often walk into a room, have a conversation with a lot of people, and this is where I had a breakdown. I would inspire them so much and then walk away and forget it the moment I left the room because I was just playing in my head about what could be happening and walk away with other people I was talking to who weren't futurists, weren't strategists, or weren't inventors like I am. They thought I was making commitment, and then they'd be very disappointed when nothing would happen. And I'm like, what did we talk about again? So, and then they bring up the topic. Then I remember it like it was yesterday, right? But without that context, I'm clueless because I'm playing with so many things in my head at any given time, right? So for the inventor, the yes doesn't always mean yes. It means yes, it's possible, right? For the performer, the challenge is their yes doesn't mean yes because it means, yes, I like you. Of course, I want to help you. Right? So when you're actually going to go do a contract, right, and make a commitment, you actually have to get the guy that knows what the hell is going on. So you have to get the guy that actually knows their stuff, right? So you need a Steve Wozniak who actually built the technology. What they're doing, right? You need the wonderful Wizard of Oz to tell you, yes, this can be done. No, this cannot be done. And so those are the guys that have to write the contract. Because those are the ones that are best suited to let people know this is what's technically possible. And with that, you'll have a contract that actually can be enforced, and that where more likely to under promise and over deliver than the other way around, right? Because people
Right.
forget that when you have a contract, right, there's an obligation to say, yes, I will do this in exchange for that. But the piece people forget is, and here's the consequence if I don't get this done. And that's the part people forget in the contracts. And again, that's why you do have to have good lawyers as your friends or
Yes.
have that skill set to protect you. And so that you, when you do business with other people,
Yep.
it's clear, hey, this is what we're up to, but life happens and maybe this won't happen. And so here's what's going to happen in case it doesn't happen, right? So you
Mhm.
need a producer like was to say, hey, this is what can be done, what cannot be done, and we'll work on it, right?
Mhm.
The flaw or the gap that producers have is that they are so hardworking, right?
Yep.
So these are the guys that are your friends that always have lists,
Yep.
the engineers who really get stuff done. Their challenge is that when they're faced with a problem,
Mhm.
their default solution is to put their nose to the grindstone, right? And they will work on that problem until they have no nose. Right? And so, if it's something that can be solved by effort, fantastic.
Yep.
But if it requires perspective and a new vision, then it doesn't get fixed, right?
Mhm.
So their yes and their no means yes and no because they know
Mhm.
what they're doing. But without the proper direction or the right guardrails, then they get derailed into themselves, right? And
Yep.
then they fall into a doom loop of feeling left alone and abandoned because they're out there working in the coal mines, right? Digging themselves deeper in a hole.
Yep.
And then the rest of us, we're so used to letting them go do their stuff. We think they're just out there and they're fine and dandy, but actually they're getting
Yep.
they're getting they're getting depressed and they're getting stuck
Yeah.
and getting even more stuck day by day, right? So
Mhm.
you need someone to actually be able to put in the structure to say, you know what? Here are the facts,
Mhm.
right? This is the target we're supposed to make. This is the deadline we're supposed to have.
Mhm.
So it's either done or not done, right?
Mhm.
And so you need someone to make a judgment call
Yep.
and objectively say, this is what's happening or not happening, right? So, the in the Apple context, right? Here's where you need your CFO guy like Tim Cook, who goes, you know what? Here is the objective facts, and this is actually where we as a business are making the most money. So let's double down on that, right?
Mhm.
For all his flaws, it's under Tim Cook that Apple has become a ridiculously large company,
Yep.
right? Um, and so he is what we would call a judge, right? And so a judge, they're the ones that you talk to who you really, as a startup, you hate having conversations with these guys because they're the downers,
Yep.
right? There's the ones that say no. This is not maybe a good idea. But
Mhm.
here's the thing: when a judge says no, they don't actually mean no. What they're actually saying is not yet, or
Yes.
no, this doesn't actually meet the standards, or no, I'm not convinced because you don't have enough evidence,
Mhm.
right? And what people forget is that if you really want to have a machine that doesn't just move fast,
Yep.
it moves with velocity. Velocity means speed and direction,
Yep.
right? The most important part isn't just strapping the biggest goddamn engine you can stick on four wheels, right? It's having great brakes,
Mhm.
right? Because brakes are critical to maneuverability.
Right.
So these are the people you actually need to talk to early to make sure you've got good brakes and guardrails in place
Yep.
so you don't crash and die,
Mhm.
right? Because the only failure you can't learn from is the failure that kills you,
Totally
right?
agree.
So these guys are super vital, but they're super depressing and hard to talk to. So here's a trick. Sorry, here's a hack, right?
Okay.
When you want to solve a problem and you know you're going to have to deal with, and you want the perspective or need to deal with someone who you know is going to say no, all you have to do is talk to them 2 weeks ahead of time.
Mm.
Let them get their objections out of the way. And more often than not, what will happen is if you have a great idea and everything is polished, fantastic, you're good to go,
Yep.
right? But what's likely to happen is they will say no, right? And at first it's going to sound like, no, we hate you. No, that's stupid. But
Mhm.
that's actually not what's happening usually. They're just saying, like I said, no, that's not what the standard practice is. Or do you actually know what the standard practice is? Right? Or no, there's not enough evidence to convince me that this makes sense. So go back and build that evidence stack. Right?
Yep.
And if that's a key decision maker, they're actually giving you the keys to the kingdom and telling you, if you solve this, then you're a step closer to me saying yes. Right? I'm writing an article for Business Manual for RJ on the 7 M's that I developed for fundraising, and I added an extra one, and as I was writing it, it's called mindset, right? And the point of inspiration I have is actually Canva, right? So Miss Perkins actually had to listen to a lot of no's before she got her one yes.
Wow.
And what people tend to overlook in that story is that the reason she got to that yes is that over those hundreds of no's, she was learning and she was iterating and she was pivoting her business until it got too good to ignore. Right? And so that's what I encourage you guys to do when you hear a no. Try to understand the rationale behind the no and then learn from that. And then when you're dealing with a key stakeholder, right? You're again getting the keys to the kingdom and saying, all right, if I get this, then that's one more step closer to the yes that I need. Sometimes you have to go through one person. Sometimes you go to hundreds of people to get this done. Right? And just one more quick story. So one of the other big career lessons I had was when I was in Malaysia and I was working with a large government-linked corporation. Where to get anything through the line, I had to actually go through a hierarchy of corporate, right? And in Malaysia, the other situation was that I had to deal with royalty, like literal royalty that worked in the company.
Oh, wow.
Right? And so what would happen is that you go through all these meetings, and some people who weren't even in the discussion can just give a hint that they don't like it. And then everybody will kowtow to that royalty or that. Right? And then you'd fall back and then fall all the way back to the beginning. So when I first started there, I was so frustrated and so exhausted all the time because all the work I built would come to nothing in the end, right? And so what I learned was actually, at the time I was reading a new translation of Art of War, the Denver translation of the Art of War, right? So do look for that book. It's called The Art of Victory, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or The Rules of Victory. And when I was reading that, what really stuck to me is one of the early lessons where basically, if you want to strategically win a battle, you want to build your fort, and then you foray out from that fort. So what I realized was when I'm doing these meetings where I have to go through a hierarchy of people, right? We have to first agree on the fort, right? Which is, what does success look like? Because that way, when we're arguing, it'll always be against that standard, right? Because if there's new stuff that comes up as what they want to happen, then we can always go back to, yes, and we agreed that among all the many things that matter, this is the thing that matters the most.
Got it.
Right? So every time something would fall apart, and it inevitably would, we would have a fallback position to go back on. So instead of falling 100 steps behind, we only fall one step behind each time.
Got it.
Because every time we'd be winning based on a fort. And then if there's some aggressive retreat that we had to do, we'd fall back on, is this what we agreed that success would look like, right? Is this what they actually want to achieve? Right? And then that would be a critical element helping us do the campaigns and win the business that we had to win, right?
That's amazing.
So I hope that gives some clarification on some of the tools that really make a difference, right? So it's about, as we talked about earlier, creativity. How does that actually work? Because creativity isn't just luck; it's a process, right? And then having the structure to look at an argument from all sides and all perspectives, because there's what you know and what you don't know, but even more powerfully, there's what you don't know, or what you don't know, right? And so you have to try and unlock those as much as possible. And then you want to look at how do you fail fast and learn faster, And then these last two pieces are about trying to get people to be in the role that suits them best, right? If you understand the process and you put people in the right place,
Yep.
then hopefully things get done faster. And then the last, as you go out into the battlefield, do think about establishing your first position so that you can always fall back and build from there, so that you'll always have a basis for progress as opposed to falling straight back down to hell
Yep.
when shit hits the fan.
Absolutely. I love it. I'm learning so much out of this episode now. But now let's take our first break. And when we come back, we will now go straight to the hustle now in the M&A world, and also of course the startups, because what you just said now is basically the prelude, getting used to no's and all that, to what you'll go through in Founders Institute when it gets back on top again in the Philippine startup ecosystem. But let's talk about that more after the break.
Hey hustlers, ever feel like your money's flowing in, but your profits are nowhere to be seen? Is managing your cash a constant source of stress, leaving you anxious about day-to-day operations? Or maybe you're holding back on growth because you're unsure if your finances are really stable. The real problem? You don't have a clear picture of your finances. Without a strategic financial partner, you're basically operating in the dark, always one step away from hidden pitfalls. But what if you had a seasoned fractional CFO who understands these challenges and gives you clear and straightforward steps to increase profits and grow steadily without the cost of a full-time CFO? That's what One CFO delivers. One CFO combines the strategic thinking of experienced CFOs with their own cutting-edge CFO tech platform, giving you transparent, real-time insights that empower you to make smart moves. They're the go-to fractional CFO partner for growing companies like Quick Insure, Avion School, J Labs, Advance, One Lot, Colorette, and Stash, helping them conquer financial challenges and achieve remarkable growth. Imagine having a crystal clear view of your financial performance and the confidence to execute bold, growth-driving strategies. Ready to level up? Click the link in the description or go to onecfoph.co. That's onecfoph.co right now to book your free no-obligation consultation. Gain clarity in your finances and grow your business with confidence. Click the link or visit onecfoph.co today.
And we're back from the break. We're still with JDL. Told us such an amazing episode. Not even an episode. It feels like an episode within an episode of how to structurally think and approach startup life and also business. But I want to go straight to this. Obviously, you gave us a good glimpse already of the hustle prior to that, to being in San Miguel, being not Magic City, in Atlanta and JH Heartland, and also KL. And of course, being in China and now going to an M&A world. So we'll fast forward to that life. So after going through all of these things that you did prior to, or as your dad called it, gallivanting. There you go. When you're now into the M&A world and you've been on the grind itself, being in business, what was the lens you brought in now? Because aside from obviously Gravitas, you also have, again, Bullet Day and all these other things that you now have to do. Because the reason why I'm asking this is that if you're assessing businesses, there might, correct me if I'm wrong, if there is an overlap of, hey, this is a good M&A company or M&A eligible company, and this is a good startup to invest in. Are there things that blend together, or you look at them at a different lens?
So in the Philippines, unfortunately, there's very few opportunities for that confluence because the quantums we're talking about are vastly different, right? In terms of the amount of capital we're talking about, right?
Of course.
So when we're talking about startups,
couple $100K
in an uninflated valuation, right? When they're coming in and you really look at where their business is and where it might be going, that's really a couple of $100,000 to get them to the next level. Right. Granted, there are situations where you do need millions of dollars for a business to actually achieve the scale that it needs to reach escape velocity. But most startups really aren't in that space, even though they think they are or they want to be. Most of the time when we're having conversations with founders, the hard truth is that they're bloody delusional, right?
Yep.
Because they're thinking about where everything could be 5 years from now, and they want all that money now. But in real terms, they have to figure out the first thing, which is, hey, what's the problem you're solving for your customers right now? And what's the first milestone you need to hit? Let's see if you can get that first step. Then let's talk about running up the stairs and climbing the Himalayas, right?
Yep.
So there's limited overlap. But that being said, right? Because again, I tend to live a bit in the future when I'm talking to a startup. One of the things people have been kind enough to compliment me on is that they thank me because I'm sometimes able to see where their business could be, where even they could not. And that's not because I'm brilliant, right? It's because I'm old.
Or both. What are you talking about? It's both.
And because I've actually just seen more than you as a founder. So as a founder, if you have a good career, you might have maybe 2 or 3 great startups.
Yep.
Right? As an investor, as a mentor, I've had the privilege to mentor startups from Kuala Lumpur to Kazakhstan, from Switzerland to Samoa, right? And all across the Philippines. And I've been able to look at different industries. And then as a consultant, over a couple of decades, I've really seen different businesses across different markets. And I've been able to look deep into large conglomerates and understand the mechanics of their business. I had one client in Malaysia where basically I knew more about this company than 99% of their entire team because I had to do the integrated marketing plan for all their operations across all their business lines, across all their markets. So I saw how everything fit. And like the people that were running it were making a joke that I was like their mini McKinsey guy. And then so when McKinsey came to actually help them do a delisting and relisting, right? Guess who had to go train the McKinsey guys? It was me, right? Because I'm the one resource person that understood everything and gave them a good perspective on how to get things done, right?
Yep.
So back to the core idea or the core question, right? One of the things that I'm able to help founders do is see this is what's possible for you, right? And now what I'm really trying to do is not just give them the idea that this is what's possible.
Yep.
Through the different things that I'm doing, I'm building a tool set, and more importantly, I'm creating teams, right, with established players at every stage of the game, not just here, but all over the world, because we have to stop playing a local game because we are in competition with the rest of the planet.
World. Yes.
Right? It is not enough to be Filipino good enough. We have to be world class. And it's an exciting time to be doing because now the tools and accessibility are actually making that possible. One of the things I've made a small contribution to in the world of strategic thinking for startups is I built on the lean canvas. So many of your readers are familiar with the lean canvas framework.
Yep.
Right, on helping find product market fit.
Yep.
But when I was looking at becoming a VC, one of the things I realized that there's a thing that's missing that's not articulated as clearly, which is timing. Timing is such a powerful predictor of success that a great idea, is a great idea is often a great idea for a long, long time.
Right.
But in terms of whether that great idea can become a great business, it's sometimes a matter of timing. The idea of delivering pet food, via online channels has been a powerful idea for decades.
Yep.
That's why pets.com got millions and millions of dollars.
Yep.
Which they all promptly lost and burned.
Yep.
Right? To 2 years ago, I was talking to these two kids, um, who were very inspirational. These were little hustlers who took some of their father's hardware money,
Okay.
and they decided to start importing and rebranding dog food from China and
Okay.
selling it on Lazada and Shopee. And they went from 0 to 1 billion pesos in 1 year.
What?
Why? Because they had the right timing. Because by the time they came to the idea, other people had laid the groundwork
Yep.
and all the systems were in place. They had the capital, granted,
Yep.
right? But they also had the hustle to go and do it,
Mm.
right? But a lot of the other pieces were in place. And now, in this context, if you want to be a Filipino that builds a world class business, besides all the other infrastructure changes that have happened, the technological changes and the accessibility of that are making that even more possible today. So I'm very excited about Filipinos building world class companies
No, I
with
totally
limited.
agree. No, I totally agree. And that's what I started learning recently. I mean, not recently, since I realized that after Chatbot PH, when PNA was made, when that's how we call it, PNA Podcast Network Asia. At the bare minimum, we wanted to be dominating Asia, right? And we want to be able to really show that this is a world class company. Because I knew Philippines alone is not big enough, and that's what's lacking a lot in our startup ecosystem. Now, okay, I can win, but winning in the Philippines alone does not give you the resources or unlock you the merits that you need in order to really solve a problem, at least regionally. So
Yep.
that's why I kept going to the States to be able, not Magic City, Orlando lang, just a couple
Yeah.
hours there for podcast conferences. And yeah, that's where I realized that, man, two things. We can compete at a global level. We just choose not to because we don't see what's out there. We have what
Absolutely.
it takes. Second is that you have to really package the way you do it, not for a Pinoy market, because I was selling the same product here.
Yep.
The same thing I'm selling, which is podcast post production in podmachine.com. In the right timing, in the wrong timing, in the wrong market, everyone was saying, dude, you're so expensive.
Yep.
Like, huh? What are you talking about? And then I sold it to the world, and the world loved it. I did not change a thing. Just change
So
what I sold to and to whom at the right
I
timing
think
also.
I think Ron, you actually changed everything,
Oh,
right? Because you change your perspective and you change your mindset and you change your
mm,
scope, right? So you basically chose to play in a different field,
yep,
right? You can play the same game, but if you choose, so when you're competing, right? Uh, the basketball court you choose to compete in makes a big difference, right? I've
yep.
never completed a single quarter of basketball in my life, but
Okay,
the analogy still holds, right? Like
yep,
people make fun of these NBA players. They think, oh, that guy sucks, right? But the worst NBA player, I am quite sure, will kick your
yep,
ass because
absolutely.
you're playing at a very different level, right? So, yes, that's a critical part of it. And so, if you want to really articulate or get a perspective on timing, go to my website, bulletday.com. I've got a resources page, and I do have
Mm.
a tool that I called Fat Canvas as opposed to Lean
Oh,
Canvas. So you can fill that up. I'm fixing it up a bit now because there's
yep.
a technical glitch, but the framework is there. And if you reach out to me, I'll send you a PDF that you can fill up on your own so that you can work on a smarter canvas than just the lean canvas to
No,
really get the power of timing and the momentum on your side.
for sure, for sure. And you need to be able to understand this because sayang, if you have what it takes and you're selling in a small market and you don't realize what's out there, no matter how much you hustle, you'll eventually just realize the sad part is when people quit. But when you just find a way to, like, again, change the perspective, change where you sell it, it doesn't take much for you to realize, like, oh my god, we're making X amount of MRR, and I don't want to touch local money, right?
Yeah,
And you can actually thrive and you play to your cards and you don't have to change much, at least in operations. The change, you're right, would be perspective and how you look at the rest of the world. Now, a couple of questions before we take our last break, because this is the most important thing. I want to zero in on Maine.
Sure.
Right? Man, you've been doing this 9 years, 5 months now, since January 2016. To be very specific, this is according to LinkedIn. I'm not a creep. I did not, I did not quantify that on the top of my head. This is according to LinkedIn. Okay. You've seen the ecosystem grow. I want to know your perspective on, because you've seen so many startups that want to pitch the main gels, right? Through time. And obviously, you're the guy that screens who gets to actually get to heaven and pitch the main gels themselves, and who doesn't. I want to understand your perspective upon that screening process. What do you look for in those ones that are get to pitch to the main gels, and those ones who are not yet ready to pitch them? Because eventually they will, right? It's like what you said. It's never a never. You're playing the Tim Cook game here, right? It's not a never. It's a not yet. But what is the differences between those people who make it and who get a not yet?
Sure. So let's get some fundamentals out of the way, right? So people have a notion of what an angel is, where you show up in a coffee shop, you show your passion, and this rich old guy will be moved and inspired and say, "Oh my God, you remind me when I was a young little bugger. Here's a check for $1 million," right?
There you go.
And you know what? Honest to God, that actually does happen.
Sometimes,
right? But again, normally not here, right?
I know a dude that got reminded of somebody's father got a check. But again,
right?
that's rare.
It's rare, right? And what happens in the real world, more practically, right, is that someone says, "You know what? I think that's a great idea. Let's study it some more and figure it out." The other challenge is that in the Philippine market in particular, angel investing outside of traditional instruments is still relatively new.
Yep.
Right? And so one of the early requirements that we put into Maine was the idea that if you're going to be selling us your business, it has to be beyond an idea, because ideas are cheap.
Yep.
Execution and acceptance is everything.
Yep.
So I can't read code, right? I installed Linux on one of my old computers and I thought it was cool, but like I had a hard time, right? I don't have time for this. It's wonderful, but I don't have time for this. And I'm not Neo. I can't read the matrix, but so I can't read the code. But if you're selling to someone like SM or Robinsons, I can find out if they're happy with you or not. That's within my superpower set, right? And that's something that we can verify. That's proof that the customers are willing to pay for your solution is critical.
Yep.
So again, in other markets and for other programs, if you want to join Founder Institute, you don't need a paying customer yet. But for Maine, you have to have a paying customer. Whether they're happy or not is something we can look into later. But that's the first criteria, right? You have to be beyond the idea and, past some level of MVP and actually have a paying customer that we can.
Do they have to be recurring, or a one and done will do?
One and done will do, but it has to be fairly significant.
Yeah.
Right?
Not
but
$1.
If it's one and done and they never do it again,
Patay.
Right? Then that's really, that's like when a client comes to me and says, "Oh, I want to increase my sales." And then I buy one of their products and I can charge them for it because you didn't tell me how much you want the sales to grow, right? So you really have to, there has to be some substance to it, right?
Okay.
So the second one is really, a lot of people come in with great business ideas, right? But what's a great business idea that will make you a decent amount of salary isn't necessarily a great investment for outside investors to make a profit on their portfolio.
Yep.
So here's the unfair thing that I'm sure you've heard before, but I have to say it again, right? When we invest in your business, right, we're not just subsidizing your mistakes.
Yep.
You actually have to make up for all of my stupidity for every other failed investment I've made.
Correct.
Because we're playing a law of large numbers. It's a slightly broken system, but it's something that's worked, where basically you have to get big enough not just to cover my costs for this investment, for me to be able to play this game for a long time.
Yep.
One of the bets I make has to pay for all the others, right? That's why it's called risk capital. I am risking a portion of my capital
Yep.
in the hope of extraordinary returns, which means somebody there, and I hope it's you, right, will be delivering an extraordinary result. So
Correct.
if your ambition is too small, then you're not worth our time and effort.
Yep.
Right. And that's a perspective shift that you have to make. That I can't make that for you.
Correct.
Right. And then so that's the first side of it, right? Do you have the right level of ambition? Right.
Correct.
Then the second one, and this is what something I learned from a great angel investor called Richard Dahan out of the US. He's a super angel, and he's actually working with a group of Phil-Ams, and they want to bring money to the Philippines, right?
Nice.
He really articulated for me the power of standards, right? Are you competing or playing at the level of standards that matter?
Correct.
Right? If your business is subpar, then your results will be subpar. So if we had to choose where to put our money, we're going to put it in the team that delivers on quality. Right?
Correct.
So the first level is your ambition big enough to cover all my mistakes?
Yes.
Right? Second, are you working at a level that is sophisticated enough to give us comfort that you actually are able to do what needs to be done? Right? Then the third is, I think, are you actually realistic? Are you delulu about your valuation? Right? And just to be clear, right, this is not a problem I experience only with startups. I have established businesses that come to me and say, I want to sell for $100 million, right? And I'm fantastic. What is your revenue? Nowhere near that, right? What's your valuation expectation? I saw that that's the valuation of Jollibee. And I'm like, how are you like Jollibee? And they just say, I'm friends with Tony. I mean, like, I can't do anything with that, right? That's not enough to get the valuation that you want, right? So one of the things we do have to manage is that valuation inflation. And I think as founders, you're disappointed and you want as much capital as you need early on, as you want early on. But actually, sometimes we're doing you a favor because there's a long history of startups that got too much money too early, and that made them lazy and didn't actually give them the scale up mindset they really needed. And they started like wasting the money. Right. And it can, and cash covers up a lot of mistakes, but as you grow and as you scale, what you're actually doing is you're amplifying a problem that will cause a bigger crash or disaster later on, or you end up becoming too big that you can't walk into your valuation no matter what you do. And then you end up in a down round, which really hurts a lot of people. Right. So, to recap, right? It's number one, the right size level of ambition.
Yep.
Number two, the actual skill set and structure to get it done. Then number three, having a reasonable valuation. There's actually, like I said, I have a framework for this. Again, you can find it on bullday.com.
Yeah.
The seven M's of fundraising, right? Where I go from looking at, and again, the eighth is actually mindset, but really your market, the management, and then whether your ask makes sense, etc. So feel free to, again, bullday.com/resources. There's ebooks that you can get from Value Builder. But if you go to tools, you can look at the 7 M's of fundraising and then start studying. All right, are we in the right place, right? Have we figured out the answers to these subsets of questions, right?
Right. Now that's amazing. Now let's take our last break, and when we come back, we will now talk about what all of this means, because you're not just looking, staying in that level where, okay, I'm just screening and let's just see what happens. You're going upstream to go
Downstream.
at the downstream pala. So I'm that's like, wait, I don't know if you saw me.
Upstream.
That's like, wait, where am I going? Downstream. So we're going downstream to look at the origin of all these founders, because You mentioned earlier again the first tenet or the first qualification is ambition, right size of ambition. Diyan
Yeah.
pa lang, majority of the time, founders are super misaligned already.
Yeah.
And you
So
need to fix that at the very beginning so that they do understand what they're doing. And obviously, you're going to be doing that in FI as we relaunch FI. But I need you guys to buckle up real quick because we're going to have to take our last break. And when we come back, we will now talk about the relaunch of my beloved FI. But let's talk about that more after the break.
Hey, hustlers, before we resume the episode, let me tell you a very quick secret. Do you guys ever wonder how we're able to consistently release episode after episode here in Hustleshare without missing a date over the past 3 years? Well, it's not just pure hustle, because I'm also running my podcast along with me running my startup full time. Now, for some of you who have listened to this podcast, you guys very well know that I created a startup that is designed to help the best podcasters in Southeast Asia to realize their full potential, which is called Podcast Network Asia. And over the past couple of years, we've achieved quite a lot in P&A, helping hundreds of podcasters create world-class episodes consistently. However, what we realize is that we are not really solving the real problem of all podcasters in the world if we're not going to productize the thing that we're very good at, which is helping podcasters solve the two main pain points of a podcaster, which is number one, nobody really likes to edit their own show. Especially if you're listening to your own voice. Just like me, I cringe a lot. Having to listen to my voice for 3 to 4 hours just to release a 1-hour episode. It's no fun. And then the other thing is that most podcasters, just like me, are absolutely clueless on how to properly grow their show, which is something that we have perfected in Podcast Network Asia. So we've decided to put this all in one product that helps any podcaster in the world create world-class shows that people will love and will continuously grow. And that's why we created Pod Machine. Pod Machine is the most affordable podcast subscription service that helps you with your podcasting needs. We've got everything from audio production, crafting designs, and marketing and growth support. So as a podcaster, you can now just focus on the thing that matters the most, creating great content for your listeners. So if you are an existing podcaster or someone that actually wants to create their podcast now, no need to worry. You got a founder's discount by listening here on Hustleshare. So sign up now at podmachine.com. And aside from the free trial that you're going to get as a new user, I'm throwing in another one free edit as soon as you sign up for just as low as $49.99 USD a month to start creating a consistent and world-class podcast. Again, that's podmachine.com and use the code Hustleshare to get your founder discount. So if you have friends that are podcasters and if you want to have a podcast just like this, y'all know what to do. So just go and talk to you guys in Pod Machine.
And we're back from the break. We are still with JDL, then told us the amazing structures. I love it because there's so many tidbits of learnings and how you structurally basically talk about how you make these decisions and, and even wrap it up and recap everything. But even if we go on tangents a little bit, we go back to the main timeline. But now, again, you mentioned one key tenet earlier before we took our last break of how you guys screen startups. And at the start, and I would go on a tangent a little bit. I mentor startups a lot. I've been mentoring for years now since I failed in Party File. So Joji, who is one of the founding members of FI here, got me there, and especially more after I sold Chatbot in 2016.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, okay, I've seen so many startups come through. And to a fault and not their fault, majority of the time on the ambition pa lang, it's so misaligned. And I already know, like, man, if you do not change your ambition, if you don't know how to look at your comps, your comparables, you don't look at your numbers. Because sometimes this is what I see. Super ambitious. Pero what the hell were you smoking? Right? I do not see, there's no structure to how you say, I'm going to be the biggest, whatever. It's like years ago, there was a space tech startup pitch in the final pitch 2019 when we got funded. Space tech now. And I look at it like, dude, what have you done in space? Were you a former NASA employee? Just a kid. I love the ambition, but you have not earned your stripes. How are you going to solve this problem? Because you do not understand this problem well, right? But if you compare it to the likes of Amel Nava, who wants to solve importing, but have earned her stripes because she came from that world, it becomes more believable that, oh shit, she's up to something here, right? That's what I see. And I hate to say it, but there's more space tech startups out here who want to solve a big, ambitious problem, or sometimes it's not even big enough. They want to be the Grab of a random town in the Philippines. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. I'm not saying I'm shitting on your startup. It's not. But VC and angel money is not the game you should play. This is a lifestyle business. I got hurt when Paul Rivera told me at the start of my first startup that this is a lifestyle business. I did not understand that before, because I thought that, I'm fundable. Kickstart funded me. I'm not a lifestyle business. But now I fully understand it. There's nothing wrong with having a lifestyle business. You're fully in control, but don't expect that VCs and angels will take a bet on it, because JDL just explained it earlier. They're hedging their bets. This is a game of portfolio. So if they invest in you, if the other 3 startups that they fucked upon or did not meet up, they expect you to make bawi on that, right? So you owe your investors an exit the moment you take somebody else's money, and that's what I want to find out. So FI is making a comeback, and I'm happy they are. Woo! Because this is the ultimate litmus test. It's a grind. So for those people who don't know FI, JDL, what is FI again? And how do you guys weed out the ones who are really good founders and those ones who just want to be entrepreneurs, to become, and that's fine, because this is like what JDL's debate teacher said before. Fuck up now while it's in private, rather than you fuck up spectacularly while you're in front of everybody. JDL, what's FI?
So, Ron, Founder Institute, or FI, is the world's largest pre-seed accelerator.
Okay.
They have over 200 chapters all over the world. They've raised over $1.8 billion. And they've launched a number of great startups globally. And they have a full stack of curriculum to help you get from idea to incorporate the idea that's investable.
Yep.
And then give you access to investors from all over the world. Right? And because they've been at this for a long time, they have the benefit of data and building systems and building structures to help make that happen.
Yep.
So the first thing that you can do is go to fi.co/Philippines and apply.
There you
right?
go.
And as you finish that application, you will end up you'll be invited to do a entrepreneur DNA test.
Ooh.
So they will actually study and let you know for free, what your skill sets are, and whether you are, what kind of tools you bring to the table, what assets you bring to the table as a potential founder, and they'll give you an entrepreneur score and let you know, okay, actually you have what it takes to be an entrepreneur, based on what you've shared, right? So, go to fi.co/DNA and take that entrepreneur test, and then learn a little bit more about yourself and see your blind spots. Yeah. And also see your highlights, because sometimes one of the challenges is that sometimes founders don't know what they're fantastic at. They don't see it because they swim in that water every day. They don't realize how powerful they are.
Yep.
Until someone gets to tell them, hey man, you are fantastic at this.
Yep.
Right? Of course, the other side is sometimes they think they're too fantastic and say, hey man, actually,
there's no in between. Eh? There's either you undersell yourself or you're too full of yourself.
Yeah. So there are shades, but so do take that fi.co/DNA or even better, go to fi.co/Philippines and apply. And then that is the first step
Yeah.
to really see,
Mm.
right? Begin with yourself.
And what are they gonna experience here? Because again, I've had a glimpse, right? This is a journey of again, I call it a litmus test because you're really gonna be put on the grinder to really validate your thought processes and give you as close as possible the real startup grind. And it starts with pace. There's a
Yep.
lot of people, if you think you're gonna be cute, I'm gonna do like an MBA activity here. I'm gonna fucking pitch, cute. No, you're gonna be hustling, man. And you need to fucking show your mistakes, come clean and be embarrassed in front of everyone, or show your triumphs. Because that's what accelerators do. They show the one thing that separates a traditional business over a startup is a startup grows at record speed that a normal, say, brick and mortar would probably do in a quarter or half a year. Perfect example. I know one alum who went through the same uh, program years ago, pre-pandemic. Audrey Tanko. Okay, so Audrey, dude, this girl did not need this, right? This is the batchmate of Magellan, who did Acudine back then. Audrey is the heir apparent of the Bizou group. She did not need this. She went here to really understand, hey, what is a startup, right? Left her ego at the door, created a tech startup, and I think it was a recruitment or a job site for blue collar F&B workers. Pitch left and right, win a competition, even got sent overseas. I forgot which one to really do it. And now she understood what that means. And then she comes back to to her inheritance per se or Bizou. She has a whole another lens, right? Whether she still continues on the startup and whatnot, it did not matter. You come out different, right? So that's it. It puts you on the grinder to get that. But what else happens through this intense intense program? Because I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, not everyone that applies ends up graduating. It's literally gonna chew you up and spit you out if you do not meet the criteria as well, because that's what startup life is. It's
Yep.
it's dog eat dog.
So, well, it's dog eat dog, but what they're trying to do is build you a pack of wolves to run with, right? So you're actually it's by yourself, right? So the FI core program, which we're opening with, really helps founders get from their idea to an investable company, an incorporated investable company in 14 weeks. You can also come in when you're already incorporated and you have a business that's running and really help you prepare to get outside money by helping you, like you said, go through the grind and go through the hustle, right? It's a 14-week program. We meet we'll meet every Wednesday, but there's homework that we expect you to do. So when you're going to do this, we expect you to commit 20 hours a week to get this done. This is not just show up and,
be cute,
play along for a few hours, right? This is actual work. And the thing is, if you're building a startup, guess what? It's actual work, right? If you're a entrepreneur and you're doing this for vanity, fantastic. Have at it. Enjoy your followers on the gram or the TikTok or whatever it is you young kids are on right now. But if you want real money from investors from here and around the world, then you have to hustle. You have to put in the time. And you have to be humble and be willing to say, you know what? F you, but what if you're right? What can we do? Right? And so we actually take them from a course. It begins with vision and mission, and then it goes all the way to really helping you go through the legal. We have your customer development, your product development, and really how do you have to pitch to investors and refine your story. And it's not just about coming up with a clever pitch so that you'll win people's money, right? One of the powerful things about pitching is that it actually brings clarity to yourself,
Yep.
right? And when you're actually able to articulate what you stand for, what you're building, how you're going to get there, that's also super important for getting shit done.
Mm-hmm.
Because I hate to say it, right? But if you're building this with a team, guess what? They're not psychic. They don't know what you're thinking until you tell them. If they are psychic, then fantastic. Please ask them to figure out what lotto numbers I should bet on next, right?
Right.
But the real world with real people has a lot of miscommunication, and that's a friction. If you want to succeed, you want to eliminate as much friction as possible.
Yep.
And being clear about what you want, right? And being clear about what your customers or the other person across the table wants. And then finally being able to figure out how can helping you get what you want, get me what I want, is a secret to success, right?
Yep.
So we actually go through a rigorous process of going through a curriculum and with the added benefit of letting you learn these lessons from an army of volunteer mentors who want you to succeed.
Yeah.
They're not going to be easy on you, but that's because we want you to succeed, right?
Yes.
So thankfully, among the people that we've been able to get on board, there's wonderful people who've already committed to be mentors. And I'm inviting my friends who are mentors to reach out and say, yes, I want to help lead this cohort and the next ones. So for example, one of my fellow founder institute VC lab co-alumni, right? He's agreed to be a mentor and he's going to lead in customer development. And you know what this guy did? Do you know your fast charger on your phone, the Qi technology?
Yep.
Right? His accelerator in Hong Kong was the main proponent that made that technology get into every goddamn phone in the world.
Wow.
That's the guy that's going to teach you about customer development.
Wow.
Maybe you'll have something to learn from him. I know I do.
Yeah.
Right? So this is the kind of caliber of people. So thank you, Andre Levoto, for saying yes to doing this.
You go.
And being part of the Founder Institute community. So these are the caliber of people who are willing to share their time and energy to help you succeed. So that's what it is. It's a 14-week intense course that will transform you. I promise you it will not be easy, but if you go through it, it will be worth it. So again, fi.co/Philippines, we have an early bird discount for only $300 if you apply soon. And then after that, we have to bump up the price, right? Because this is a this is a world-class program.
When is the next cohort going to launch?
So the next cohort, we've pushed it off to September. Right?
So there's a lot of time when you listen to this.
By the time this is, but we do have a early deadline sometime in June. But the earlier you apply, the better you prepared you'll be, and then you'll be able to get in the pipeline of all the other activities that we're doing. So right now, myself and my co-leader, Dean Pax Lapid, we're organizing our next live activity, which will be a talk where we're going to introduce you to the funding access in the Philippines. So I'm working on getting invitations for everyone at every step in the food chain, from getting grants to getting crowdfunding, to angel investors, to local VCs, to regional and global VCs. They'll all be in a room sharing their thoughts, telling you what they're looking for, right? And then giving you guys a chance to ask your questions and get them answered. We're trying to explore whether we'll do it virtually, full virtual, or if we can do a hybrid. So I'm hoping we can do a hybrid event so there can be a live audience.
It's different when they're pitching you in person. I remember.
And again, this isn't the pitch, right? But this is a Q&A session, right?
Absolutely.
We're going to explore doing a pitching session later, but for now, that's the next key activity that we're working on getting off the ground.
Absolutely. Now, before I let you go, one last question. It might be cliche, but what would be your advice to tech startup founders here? Because you've been around for a long time now, right? You've seen ebbs and flows, bull runs and bear runs and whatnot, right? You've seen the whole cycle and multiple generations of startups come and go. But what would be your advice to startup founders who are probably in the thick of the game now, who probably still don't understand how this game is played per se, what would be your advice?
So I'll cheat and I'll give two, right?
Yeah.
So the first one is be scared and do it anyway.
Mm.
Just get over yourself. It's fucking scary.
Yep.
It is. I mean,
Yep.
there's no. If it's too easy, then maybe you're doing it wrong. I don't know. So
Yep.
when stuff is scary, just do it anyway, right? Then the second one I think is this, right? And this is something that I learned from Adeo Rossi, the founder of FI, Founder Institute, and now he runs VC Lab, Venture Capital Lab. And one of the things he told me really stuck, which was 100% of startups fail when the founders give up.
Got it.
Right? So don't give up.
Never
right?
give up.
That's easy for me to say because I'm not the founder. That's why I'm on the investor side. The counterpoint to that, of course, is that it's easy for many of us to say because we're coming from a privileged space, and that there are other, of course, ambitious people who don't have all the resources they need to get to where they need to go, right? But if you have that commitment and that vision and your willingness to adapt, then hopefully it's a matter of time.
Yep.
Right. And I don't want to give this advice nonchalantly because I do know that it's difficult for many people. And my advice for people finishing from that are the children of billionaires and they're finishing in Ateneo, UP, La Salle, Harvard, or somewhere else is different from a little bit moderated or adjusted for the people that are coming from different economic circumstances, right? But the idea is that you do have to really commit to keep figuring a way forward.
Yep.
It might not turn out the way that you expected it to be, but if you keep moving forward, then hopefully you will keep moving forward. That's all there's it. I take inspiration from not just books, but also pop culture, right? And one of the most inspiring things I saw a few years ago was this show called Altered Carbon, right? Which is a great show, sci-fi. And one of the most powerful scenes was basically this guy was being tortured and all he was trying to do was get to the next screen. So when you're playing this game, sometimes all you're trying to do is figure out what it takes just to get to the next screen. And do check in and see if it's something you want to keep doing. Right? So do check in with everyone, what your values are and what success means to you to make sure that you don't just fall into the grind. Right? Make sure that the grind and the hustle is a grind and hustle getting you to somewhere you want to be. Right? But if it's somewhere where you want to be, then keep grinding and keep hustling. If it's not, then stop.
Yeah. Right? That is such an amazing advice. And again, you're preaching to the choir because, man, there's so many times I wanted to give up, but somehow, some way, I just needed to find the next screen, just like what you said. And eventually you'll figure it out. We're P&A this year. I don't know if you've seen the last investor report we've sent over. If for the past 3 years, siguro, it's been fucking crazy and it's hard, but because I just kept making sure that we end up in the next screen, we're set to have our banner here. I hope this continues because things can also change overnight. But my God, but just by not dying, I have a name for it, JDFD. Just don't fucking die. There you go. And you'll be just fine. Such an amazing episode. Thank you so much. Amazing episode, JDL. But before I let you go, again, if people want to work with you in Bullet Day and FI and whatnot, where do they go and how do they do that?
Sure. So there's different ways to reach me, but let's do it in the order that people probably care about. If you have a startup that has a MVP and a paying customer, and you want access to the largest, most active angel network in the Philippines, please send your deck to pitch@main.ph, where the secretariat will shepherd you the process of getting screened, hopefully by me. If you're a founder with a crazy idea or already have a running business and you want to become incorporated, investable, and world class, and you think you need some help getting there, please apply to fi.co/Philippines and join our next cohort.
There you go.
So looking forward to hearing you from those channels. If you have a business that wants to be acquired, or you want to go buy a business, go check out bulletday.com and you can book a 15-minute discovery call with me there.
There you go. So such an amazing, again, this is just a glimpse of what type of conversations you're going to have with JDL, but there's so much more that you can do if you actually do a one-on-one with him. But before I let you go, JDL, thank you very much. Follow us on whatever podcast app you're listening to, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. And if we did say some jargon, it's going to be show notes on hustleshare.com. And if you also want to be one of the brands that support Hustleshare, because this content is not free and it's not easy to sustain. We've been doing this for 6 years and we'll be doing this until I die, or maybe I automate myself and translate all this daldal and crazy energy into an AI. We'll see. But if you want to be one of those brands, please do support us at premium.hustleshare.com. Again, JDL, thank you very much.
May angels smile upon you all.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.